Hello, this is Blaine C. Van, and welcome to the Happy Husband Podcast. Today's show, we'll be talking to this wonderful woman that I met. She's a colleague of mine, and we're going to be discussing many things about marriage. But today, I think is really going to be helpful because, one, she's a mature woman. She's been married over 17 years, and she's also been married with a blended family. And she's going to talk to us today, Ms. Parker, about how the Holy Spirit helps her in her marriage, how the Holy Spirit helps her have patience, how the Holy Spirit helps her co-parent, and the challenges that her and her husband face in the past 17 years. It is going to be a very good podcast, especially if you are a young mother. This is Blaine C. Van, and this is the Happy Husband Podcast. Hey everyone, this is Blaine C. Van, the Happy Husband, and today we're going to have a little interview with a real nice lady. She's one of my colleagues, but we're going to talk about marriage today. How you doing today?
Doing great.
She's doing great. She got this great smile. We're in her office, and we're both high school teachers. And what is the name of your job that you do?
I am the high school chorus teacher.
So what do you do with that?
I teach music, and we perform concerts and sing at graduation.
Yeah, you do all those stuff. Mm-hmm. And she's married, so we're going to talk about marriage today. And how long have you been married?
Over 16 years.
16 years. So I would just want you to know, just describe it. We're in her office. There's musical stuff all over the place. She next to her, is that your chorus room?
That's my classroom, yeah.
Your classroom is a chorus room. Mm-hmm. Well, I want you to think about that. So it's for the instruments and stuff like that. So you find that challenging?
Oh, no. That's my happy spot.
That's your happy spot.
Oh, yeah.
That's great to know.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons why I was just talking to Ms. Parker is because she said she was also happily married. Mm-hmm. And so, which is a breath of fresh air, as you guys know, in today's world. And so I just want to ask you a couple questions about marriage.
All right.
Okay, first off, you said that you've been married for almost 17 years?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you and your husband meet?
We were both graduate students at the University of Southern Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. And what type of campus is that? Big campus, urban
campus?
campus?
It's a big campus, but we were both in music. So he was getting his doctorate in music, and I was getting a master's degree. So Our class that we shared together only had maybe 15 people in it.
I got you.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. And so before you got married, of course, you were single. Mm-hmm. So the mind you had when you were single, and then that first year of marriage, what was any thoughts or transformations that happened when you were single, and then you actually said "I do," and then your thoughts and your thought patterns after that?
Well, all your decisions now affect more than just yourself.
There you go. Yeah.
And so it was the biggest difference for me was I grew up in Tennessee. My family is in Tennessee, and it had always been my intention to move back there once I finished graduate school. And instead, I elected to move here because that's where we weren't even married yet, but that's where he got a job at NC State. So I moved to Raleigh. So giving up that idea that I would move back home, right? Live close to my mom and dad because it became more important that I be here and build a life with him.
With him?
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you made that decision, mm-hmm. which is a big decision.
Yes.
Right? Because that's part of cutting the apron string. Yeah.
I knew no one here besides him.
Okay. And that was before you got married.
It was, I decided to move here in March. I graduated in May. Thankfully, we did get engaged in June because that helped me feel more comfortable about the decision I was making. But yes, we were not married when I moved here.
Okay. So you got engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how did your parents take that?
They were happy about it. They liked him. They were not so happy that I was moving away. But they felt good about everything else.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's put you in a unique position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I took my wife away.
Okay.
From her home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she followed me. Bless her little heart, right? Because I say, God, I need a wife who's got courage, mm-hmm. and who's brave. And it takes a lot of bravery and courage to move from your roots
Okay? So when you did that, so now you got to put your trust in this man that you think you know. So how was that? Do you remember?
It was fun because I really thought it would be temporary. I think
Okay.
had you told me then, like when I moved here in 2006, I think had you told me, hey, you're never leaving, I would have had a harder time. But thinking that it was just going to be temporary, he is also from Tennessee. So it was a goal of the both of us to eventually move back home. It just hasn't happened. And now we've been here so long, this is where our children are growing up.
Sure.
This is starting to become home. And I'm happy with all of that. But at the time, had you said, oh, this is it, this is where you're going to live forever, I would have not come as easily.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you a new bride.
Mm-hmm.
You got no roots.
No.
Your roots are back there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about the first 3 years of marriage?
Well, he didn't really know anybody either, so it was fun at times because we didn't really have anybody but each other.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and so we spent a lot of time together. We decided we'd be married for a while before we had kids, so it was just the two of us and our dogs. Mm-hmm. We were dog parents and took that pretty seriously. And it was hard though, like trying to build friendships, and those are important. Mm-hmm. And we joined a church. That was big because we are still the church that we chose. We visited churches for that first few months that we lived here, and then the church that we chose is still our church home. Mm-hmm. And that was really probably how we kind of started to build some roots here.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Now, I always talk about having a single mind and a marriage mind. Mm-hmm. So was you a wife in mind, like in thoughts before you got engaged? You like, I'm a wife, man, and I'm just waiting to get married? Or was there a transition from that mind to be a wife mind?
Yeah, it was definitely a transition. I was not one of the people who just couldn't wait to get married kind of thing. No, it was definitely a transition.
Because you had a career in mind.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't really know what I was so focused on, but I remember always being frustrated with my friends who had a marriage mind because I just didn't feel like that was the right way to be. And I watched some of them choose the wrong one because they were just in such a hurry to get married.
Yeah.
So they, those did not work. And so I guess I was kind of a career mind, but I also just knew that was not the type of thing that you rush. It happens when it happens.
Yeah.
And I was very content to wait for it. I was one of the last of my friends to get married. Mm-hmm. And that didn't bother me.
Right.
It was fine.
And you in there for the long haul.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the other night, I really had a visitation from the Lord about marriage. Because I think about marriage all the time. And my wife, we had something crazy happen at the house the other day. And so I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm wide awake. Like, no sleepiness nowhere. I'm like up. And God really gave me a couple of things called the long-term marriage.
Okay.
And it seems like you and your husband have made decisions, and God says there's two things that got to happen. There's some things you have to learn, and there's some things you have to become in order to have a long-term marriage, right? Mm-hmm. So thinking about your marriage long-termly, what are some of the things you believe that you had to learn in order to keep this marriage going?
I had to learn to trust. That's probably the biggest thing, because it's a lot of trust and faith that it's the right thing. So even because it's going to be hard. I think that, everybody always says that, but you don't really understand it until you're there. And I think it's the parts that are hard is different for everyone. So we ended up struggling with like infertility, right? Mm-hmm. That isn't something anyone had prepared me for.
Sure.
And that wasn't anything that came up. We did marriage counseling together and all that kind of stuff. That didn't come up ever, We read all the books and we did all the things.
Well, that's good to know. You did pre-marriage counseling.
So we did, because we got married in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And in Tennessee, if you do counseling, your marriage license is like a third of the cost that it is without it. And so, yes, we were motivated to do it for that reason. And I think we would have wanted to do it anyhow. Mm-hmm. Just because already at that point we knew people who were having marital problems, and we both grew up I do think we're both fortunate that we have parents that have been married more than 50 years.
Sure.
My parents are like 52, his are like 55.
Wow.
So, that's definitely something that we look to that and we're like, that's what we want.
Right.
So we wanted to do the counseling, but there was that extra financial motivation.
But you said something right now, I think that's really focused on what the Lord told me about long-term marriage. You got to have to want to have a long-term
Right.
marriage. Now, you may not know how to get there,
Right.
but you had, I'm telling you, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Like, it's more than a blessing. That you both had a role model that y'all looked at, and then you both saying, that's what I want.
Exactly.
So there was no fight in the marriage that this is what we want to achieve. It was like that's the core
Right.
agreement.
And I don't think that either of us would have ever even considered marriage if it wasn't going to be the forever. If we weren't looking at doing this for the rest of all of time, then why get married?
Right.
You can just, let's just have a relationship with each other. That's fine. But both of us, it's like marriage is a one-time thing.
Right.
This is it.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, that has been helpful that we both have that desire.
Sure. And so you both have the desire, you again, so you learn about distrusting. So let's just kind of talk about that, distrusting.
Okay.
Okay, so are you trusting the Lord? Are you trusting your husband? Are you trusting yourself? Like you say,
Yeah.
what is the trust in?
So the trust is in him first, so that you're going to think I'm crazy. But shortly after I met him, but well before we ever dated or anything like that, I had a Holy Spirit moment. And I knew, as much as I know, that I am sitting here talking to you, and it is, Wednesday, November 15th. As much as I knew, know those things, I knew this is who I'm going to marry. And I wasn't happy about it, so I didn't know him. I had been in a relationship for 2 years that I thought this is who I was going to marry.
Wow, that's good.
But it was just nope, it's going to be this way. And so, I pushed back. I resisted that because I didn't know this person.
He's a stranger.
He basically,
Yeah.
I had talked to him a few times. And so I tried to ignore it, pushed it away, started having dreams and visions, and it was insane. I dreamt that repeatedly. I dreamt that I was at a wedding rehearsal, right? Or a wedding reception. And I'm walking around before it starts, and I look down, and all these little placemats say Amy and Wes on them. Amy and Wes. And I was just like, what is happening?
Wow.
And I never really understood why I had that until, many years later. And I was in a class where they were talking about specifically the Holy Spirit. And they were like, it's those moments when you know exactly what you're supposed to do, but you're like, oh, I don't want to do that.
I do.
And that's what happened to me. And so... And I could even see it play out. I could see that it was, we're going to date. He's not going to be the right one at that time. There's going to be a loss of trust. But then you're going to build it back up and you're going to be together. And I think that God planned it that way because in one of those early conversations when we were working toward building back up trust, he said, if we can get through this moment, we're going to be able to get through anything. And we have come back to that conversation. We remind each other of that probably once every few years. And so I just think that, God played it all out for it to happen that way so that we could have this trust. But I think that trust is definitely first in God because he told me, this is it. This is the one. And then we do trust each other also.
Sure.
But we definitely have God
You've grown to that, though.
We did grow into that, but we had that was there before we got married.
Okay, awesome.
We grew into that in those first couple years, yeah.
Okay. And so now you got this man. He's no longer a stranger.
Right.
You got a sealed by God that this is the way it's going to go. And so I know that's when the trouble starts. Right?
Yeah.
Because God says so, that means there's no trouble, there's no barriers,
Right.
there's no hurdles.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now 17 years in, if you can share maybe one or two challenges of being married, and that maybe somebody who's thinking about it right now, Because I'm thinking about a young couple. I'm thinking about a young girl right now who's listening to you right now and go, I am right there. I'm like, whoo, And so what are some of the hurdles that you did, but also give us some hope on how you overcome them too, right?
So I guess our hurdle that we deal with on the regular basis now would just be the co-parenting.
Okay.
Our different personalities have definitely, they definitely come out with our children. And so, we definitely have some different approaches, and we have to talk about those because you have to be unified, right?
That's
in front of the children. And so, trying to find time, of course, just to talk about those things because we both work full time, and so at night you've got all the kids are there. That's not the best time to discuss how you should parent when they're all there. And so just trying to make time to talk about those things, try to anticipate what potential problems are going to be, and how we want to handle those. That's kind of that's the one that comes up now.
Which is common.
Right, right. And that's been good, too, is that we have also found friends who are similar to us, similar in age, similar age children, all work full-time. And so having those other parents to be like, do y'all do this? And yes, this is common, what everybody deals with. So that's been our latest challenge. And, of course, then before that, just having the trust in God and patience to wait for His timing when we wanted to start a family, because that did not happen in the timing that we thought it would happen. And kind of with other things too, trusting God's timing with jobs and where we're going to live. And even though we've always been here, you move around within the area, and, making those decisions and trusting Him on that. All those things just has to be a lot of communication.
Right. And so one of the main reasons why folks get divorced, one of them is communication.
Yeah.
Right. So I've been exploring all the avenues. Like communication is here, like the trunk of the tree, and then communication branches off into like communicating about this. And so I call them landmines. Right. That a marriage life is full of landmines, and then after you get blown up for a couple of things and some landmine, you stop talking about that thing, and that landmine becomes a monster. Right? Because it looms in the back. It is the elephant in the room, right? It's back there, and you have to deal with that painful conversation. And so give us a nugget about a good way to communicate with your husband.
Well, he doesn't, I have learned over the years, he does not like me to be silent about things. So once that difficult discussion has come up and stuff, and you just want to stop talking about it, that the silence upsets him. He views silence as either you don't care or you're still angry. So for us, it's just going ahead and jumping into the difficult conversations.
Sure.
Find a quiet time, which that's hard to come by in our house sometimes. So if that's the case, hire a babysitter and go out somewhere so that you can have those difficult conversations, because he definitely views that. If I just don't bring it up and I don't talk about it, but there's obviously something festering somewhere, it does not help.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. So you there's some things you have to learn, and I've learned. So you learn, and I believe that some marriages are right now, so you learn this is about your spouse, man or woman. Your spouse is this way. Now you got a choice to become the person who's either more patient or switch how your method of communicating.
Right.
Because if you don't, it's just a matter of time. That's what I believe. It might take 4 years. Shoot, it might take 7 years.
Sure.
But it's just a matter of time where you have stopped talking to each other for a long time. And that brings corruption, I think, in the roots of a covenant marriage.
Yeah.
All right. So, one last thing before we go.
All right.
There's a young woman out there. What would you like to tell her? You like, if I could talk to a young person right now who's in the first couple of years of marriage.
Okay, they're already married. Okay.
They're already married. Look, girl, I'm trying to tell you this right here. If you would take my wisdom.
Oh, I don't know if I have a lot of wisdom, but just keep having fun together. That's something we have found, is that as as we kind of progress through becoming parents of, still young children, but getting older, and then as we become the old people in our professions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm already in like the later half of my career, and he is as well. The interests and ways that we want to spend our free time shift. And so just reminding ourselves of what things we still both enjoy, and then each taking kind of a turn of like, okay, I don't really like to watch movies, but he loves to watch movies. So a few times a year, I need to just say, hey, after we put the kids to bed tonight, let's sit on the couch and watch a movie. That isn't how I want to spend my time.
Right.
But it's important that
Sure.
I do that anyway. So just finding those things that you enjoy doing together, and that can be things you continue to do together, so that you're spending time, that helps bring about communication. If you're having fun together, it's
Exactly.
easier to talk.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should say that, because I call that low-hanging fruit.
Sure.
Right. If you're having a difficult marriage, and this for those who are listening right now, you have a difficult marriage, difficult communicating.
Right.
I'm not saying you have difficult in all parts of your marriage.
Right.
Then talk about something that you both agree on.
Yes.
Don't pick the landmines.
Right. Start. Yes. Yeah. Start in the good place.
Right. Start in the safe places, the happy places. If you like talking about food, and that will begin to prime the pump for the other difficult areas
Right.
which you have to talk about. Just don't go right in and cutthroat.
Right.
Right. Especially you're having a hard time
Yeah.
in the beginning. Then as you learn to communicate to one another, it will spread out into some of the difficult areas
Right.
like that. All right. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was a very good interview, and I appreciate your time. Now, if you have any questions for her, contact me, and I'd be happy to communicate with her any questions you might have specifically, especially you young moms out there who's also working and trying to work out this thing called covenant marriage. All right, be back in a minute. Thank you so much. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right, bye-bye.